Welcome back to the Brothers War EDH. My name is Ryan. I'm joined here by Chris and Blake once again. Back with a podcast with an interesting series that we're going to be starting for probably the next few podcast episodes, and it is going to be the best card advantage cards in each of the colors. Now, you might be thinking, oh well, I can just go on freaking EDH Rec and just look at the best cards for these, but we kind of want to give another kind of approach, a little more thoughtful, especially when it comes to like CDH or like even like high power. But before we get into that, if I can just please ask y'all to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We started our Brewers Advantage series for the past couple weeks, and we've been getting some pretty good feedback on those. So. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been really fun going through those wacky decks. We also want to say too, we are going to March Madness, Columbia, Tennessee.
Yes.
March 16th.
CEDH tournament, baby.
CEDH tournament. Yep. Chris is gonna be participating in the main event, but I'm gonna be running around just talking to y'all. If y'all happen to show up, I'll be there. Play some friendlies. Come play with us. It's gonna be fun. But I also want to thank our patrons. Thank you for the people that are joining the Discord. And with that being said, let's get into this episode. So, Chris, I'll let you lead off with this. What do you got as far as like kind of how we should think about card advantage for white?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for each color. Generally when you think about card advantage, you think of actual drawing cards, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. White doesn't really do that well. It has some standout cards that we'll talk about a little bit later, but what does white do that provides advantage without actually drawing cards, right? So some things that come to the top of my mind are token producers. There's a lot of token producers. You can make very cheap and efficient 1/1 creature tokens for just one white and X and stuff like that. So like that's something that white can do. They also provide stuff that is attached to creatures, such as like Takasha's Welcome or Welcoming Vampire. Whenever a creature, enters the battlefield, that's power is 2 or less or something like that. You draw a card, even though it's triggered only once per turn. That's still a form of card draw. And then you have these, Blake and I discussed this a little bit before. Here is, stacks, Archon of Emeria, Rule of Law effects. Not necessarily card advantage, but it does create parity that you are able to get over in white, because it's like a form of virtual card advantage, because you don't get to see the cards that aren't being played. However, you're only being able to play a card 1 per turn, and so it stops necessarily being able to draw more, or not being able to draw more cards, but being able to take more game actions, and that's a form of advantage.
Well, also stops your opponents from taking game actions, which inherently brings, like we talked about, back to parity, or at least closer to parity, which is one of white's strength, is creating a more equal battlefield, and then you can kind of bring your gameplay into fruition because of that parity, so to speak.
So really, it's just more than just like drawing cards, because that's what people think about when they think about card advantage. I would say like the average person, they're just like, oh yeah, like heuristic studies and mystic remores and just stuff that can be able to get me more cards in hand, but in the form of other forms of actual, like I guess physical cards, like your token. But yeah, it is just more than just the draw.
All this to say that there is a reason why there are different flavors for each color, right? So white does things well. It doesn't necessarily have to be card draw, but I think that's a beautiful thing about Magic, is that not every single color has to have these insane card advantage engines and stuff like that. You have to be able to play to the strengths of each color.
Okay, so with all of that being said, we definitely have some examples here. Since we're going down the route more of like CDH, fringe or like high power, I had a few of them on here, but now that y'all have opened this up to more types of cards, then I think that we can probably start with those. So in the realm of like card advantage, when it comes to maybe like the the stacks route, for example. what kind of examples would y'all give? You already mentioned Rule of Law and even Archivist, so which is actually one of mine. Do y'all have any other examples that kind of fit this that could be really good for like card advantage?
Well, I mean, all of your Rule of Law effects. So deafening silence, Eidolon, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they printed a lot recently with the Phyrexian Censor, the Eidolon. Well, that's not recent, but like Archon of Emeria has been fairly recent.
That's probably arguably like probably the best one, I think.
Oh yeah,
like that one's just crazy because me and you talked about this on the last video we did for the Brewers Advantage, but that added effect to have those lands, those non-basics come into play untapped, like and like it's like a 2/3 flyer too, so it blocks pretty well, and you get those two effects, and it's only 3 mana. Like that's just really good.
They're very efficient.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I really like Archon of Emeria even outside. This is me personally. I like Archon of Emeria outside of Stacks decks just because it's so backbreaking to be able to go turn 1 land crypt into Archon of Emeria. Like Rule of Law, sure, it's fine. I wouldn't run Rule of Law and everything, but being able to have your opponent's non-basics enter tapped in CEDH is so backbreaking because a lot of decks now are so greedy they're not even running basics. So like you're getting tempoed out 2 turns, which is disgusting. So on top of that, obviously the effect of that only being able to play 1 spell per turn.
Do y'all think that there's some cards out there that people might get this confused with? Because someone could probably hear and like listen to this and they're like, oh, so a card like, I don't know, Humility can be considered card advantage in a case. I mean, it is slowing them. It is technically slowing down. Probably in the case where, of now, where like a lot of these decks are like creature based for the most part. Do you think that that there's other examples that people might get? They're probably like, oh yeah, well, y'all are saying stacks would be considered some form of like card advantage, but do y'all know any examples of ones that might be like a trap that people would play that could fall into this?
So I think the only way you should really consider stacks as advantage is if it's stopping people from deploying the cards that they've drawn.
Exactly. I was about to get to that.
Advantage.
Okay.
So for your example case, Humility is not really stopping anybody from doing anything. It just turns creatures into 1/1s. And while that you could make an argument that does at least like stop or delay, the cards are deployed and doesn't really stop them from dealing with your particular stacks piece as well, in the sense that like the Rule of Laws do, in the sense that if they draw 30 cards, doesn't matter how many they have, they can only play 1 spell a turn. So I think that's exactly. You need to look at stacks in terms of our loose definition of card advantage, because you can't just call any like for the in the example of one that everyone knows, Smothering Tithe. While that is giving you more resources to deploy more of your cards, it's not giving you more cards than your opponent. So I also wouldn't classify that as card advantage either. It's resource advantage, which are 2 different things.
Yeah, I guess you can say the same thing about like the creature token generations too. They're not really providing you cards or anything. However, they can, depending on like if you have for the example I used earlier with Adeline, if you have a Skull Clamp in that deck, that's definitely providing. It's only providing you resource advantage, but then you can turn it into card advantage easily with like Skull Clamp and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's where you wouldn't call that card itself card advantage, because
that's what I'm saying.
The Skull Clamp, it is not card advantage.
Right. That's what I was saying. I agree with you, and would say it's more resource advantage than card advantage, like the Smothering Tithe.
Yep.
So moving away from the stacks, there's I guess we can go ahead and just go over just like all the common ones for like card draw, because I mean everybody knows these. Well, I had Archivist of Ogma in the last gameplay video that we had. I was fetching up like a bunch of stuff, and Chris was just drawing just like a lot of cards. And specifically in like CDH, where like we just talked about greedy mana bases when it comes to like the higher the colors, you obviously want to be able to fix your mana the best way you can, and fetches are like the perfect way of doing that. Let's say you're playing against like a blue farm, and then I don't know, like a Sisay, and then some other 4-color deck. They're probably running pretty much every single one. So if you have that, you're just drawing a lot of cards all the time. It's not just fetches. It's all your tutors. Demonic Tutor, your Vampiric Tutor, Imperial Seal, like all those pretty much. It also has Flash, which is kind of like a I freaking gotcha, but it just offers more utility.
Value. It guarantees value.
Yeah. It guarantees the value.
My Ogma will always recycle itself at the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Because it has Flash, and I can cast it to somebody's trigger.
Yep. Yeah, definitely very good in this high power CEDH. The second one that I had, obviously, the big boy, Esper Sentinel, the try and true.
The best.
No more needs to be said. If you don't,
no more needs to be said. Just play this card. If you're playing, if you're playing white, you're playing this card most times, especially now because people are like, I heard like Play to Win say this recently. They were saying that they think that like Ristic and Mystic are like the best cards in the format in this current meta. Because it's like you get so much incremental value, and at least from the games that I've seen,
it's definitely worse than those, but it's at least on in the realm, because once per turn definitely matters, but it's it's still extremely good, especially given what white can normally do with its other card draw effects. So.
Right. It's definitely like the top echelon in white for sure. Like there's no other white card, well mono white card that really touches this one. It's like you have this, and then I guess Archivist Ogma is like somewhere after that.
To Chris's point, there are now I don't know how much of this pops up in CEDH nowadays, but there are a couple of like creature synergy white cards that like draw you a ton of cards off tokens entering, but for just your standalone good without any build addition, there's no contest.
Right. No contest.
Yeah. This is just like you play it and there's nothing else. It's like you're probably gonna be drawing cards, especially like turn 1 Esper going first. Like you're probably the odds of you being able to draw any cards before your next turn is like extremely high. So definitely one of the best ones in this high power CEDH. But the other ones that I had in terms of like overall card advantage along the lines of like actually getting a card from your library, we talked about Ranger Captain of Eos, Recruiter of the Guard. they can both get pretty much a lot of those key creatures. Enlightened Tutor. Like in white, especially, it's like you're always probably more likely going to see probably almost all 5 of these cards that we just mentioned. Archivist, Esper Sentinel, Ranger, Captain of Eos, Recruiter of the Guard, Enlightened Tutor. Like all of these are pretty much is what you're going to be seeing in terms of like actually getting cards from your deck.
I would kind of put those like tutor cards into more like card selection. I got one that came out recently that I'm really high on. Trouble in Pairs.
Oh yeah, Trouble in Pairs.
Check that one out.
Do y'all think that that's a card that eventually, it's kind of like gotcha right now, but do y'all think that people are going to start to
get off of it?
Yeah.
See, because I think people tried it a lot.
Mana is kind of.
So this is what I compare it to. As far as like that, what like your recency bias is concerned, people are going to test it out like they did Smuggler's Share when it first came out, right? Because we were pretty high on Smuggler's Share, but it's non-existent. However, this card right here is much better than Smuggler's Share in my opinion. So I think that this one could stay, especially in this current meta, because it's going to compete with your Smothering Tithe slot. It's kind of comparable. But I think that this will draw you at least 1.5 to 2 cards a turn cycle, especially in CEDH, because people are casting double spells all the time. The attack clause isn't going to really matter, and then you get the added bonus of being able to stop people's extra turns, which is pretty relevant for those Final Fortune players and infinite turn people. So Yeah, it's definitely a solid card. I don't think that it's actually going to I think that it's actually going to continue to rise in popularity if we stay in this mid-range meta.
I just wonder how many 4-mana enchantments can you really run in a deck. It's kind of my question, because it definitely competes with some pretty like heavy slots.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see if it truly does stand the test of time. Seems like a decent card though.
One that like I've been seeing more recently, especially with like Thorkel running around. We talked about this card last week, Chris. It's a Lauren of the Third Path. It's not it's not really card advantage unless you're like
I mean,
my opponents can have a lot of cards, but
it's technically card advantage in the sense that you and your opponent are drawing one more card than your other two opponents. So I mean,
right.
You can argue that it is a source of card advantage in some sense that is also serving a dual purpose to destroy an artifact or enchantment when it enters the battlefield. So again, it's functionality of card or versatility of cards, right?
Do y'all consider cards like Savine's Reclamation and those like Reanimator cards in white to be kind of like card advantage?
I'd classify it more in the terms of selection, right? Because you're trading a card for a card that you would much rather have that's in your yard. I think the one argument I could accept for Savine's is the fact that it has flashback, so it technically ends up being two cards for one, whereas most selections just end up being one card for one card, which is the difference between selection and advantage. So I think Savine's kind of lands somewhere in the middle of those two, that you could call it selection, but if the game goes long enough, it turns into advantage.
I'm 100% with Blake on that.
If it's not 1 for 1, then if it's like 2 for 1, you like cast the card and you get more than what you probably put in, and especially if it like continues to accrue value over time, that's more along the lines of like card advantage compared to 1 for 1ing, which is more card selection.
That is correct.
Okay, cool. I've been seeing people try to run Sun Titan a lot in their decks, which is,
I said it's a combo piece, so
yeah. It's a combo piece, but also too, it's like, if we consider this, the fact that we're getting more than one over time, it's definitely possible that this could be something, but it's definitely not like a reliable one. You want to obviously use this in something like what Chris is saying. It's like a combo card, but maybe in like
there's nothing wrong with it pulling double duty. If for some reason your combo is shut off and you just have a Sun Titan, it can recur things for you. Yeah. So there's no problem with something being a win condition and can also serve double duty if that win condition is shut down, or they exile your combo piece, for example. It's actually very nice that it serves that duality. Yep. Versatile cards are really what you need in CEDH. You just don't want to put a card in your deck that only does one thing. Ideally, you want all your cards to serve multiple purposes. That's what makes them more efficient and ultimately at the level of CEDH.
I remember going back to cards that people tried before in CEDH, and I don't know if y'all have seen this, but I remember back when that card Keeper of the Accord came out, and and like even though it's not like it's not like really insane, but people are like, oh man, like if they got more creatures than I do, then I can make a token on everybody's end step. And then you have the next one, which is like, if they got more lands than I do, I can be able to like search my library for a plains and put it onto the battlefield. But then they realize that as the amount of decks starting to play less and less lands, and they're playing more rocks, and it's like you have this Keeper of the Cord, and you're like, I'm not getting anything. It's just this 3/4, and then they're like, yeah, we're just done with this card. But definitely very good in like the like lower power. It gets a lot of value from there. Another example of that also is land tax. You're finding 3 basics, but like how relevant is that? You know what I mean? But like depends. It does depend.
And CEDH, it actually can be, because I mean, remember your land density in your deck is so much less. So you drawing 3 basics you may never see 3 basics an entire game. So depending on what's going on, that could be more relevant than others. It also, you need to look at like, what is the deck doing? Do those 3 cards in your hand, can you discard them, for example, for benefit or something like that? There's a lot of like that's where you need to get to the point of like looking at your deck. Like, so for example, I would not call Emil the Blessed a card advantage card, but the second you start looking at your deck and what's in there that you could flicker, maybe it becomes a card advantage card. Now, again, we're just talking about static advantage cards, but there's also the thing you need to look at is like, what is my deck actually doing, and what cards turn into card advantage with the rest of my deck as well.
Yes, man, Blake, you're killing it tonight.
Yeah, that's true. The layering. That's what's great about like, you know, these decks that like all the cards just work well with each other, is that like they can serve like what Blake was saying, like a duality purpose. Like it can do more than one thing. If most of your cards are doing more than one thing, then your deck is probably gonna be just like very, very, very consistent, which is what, you know, we want to see. But
also, one more thing I wanted to bring up. You know, we've talked about these great card advantages in white, right? However, you know, we probably don't necessarily need to say this every episode, but you know, the Lord of the Rings set came out with an amazing card that's very universal. Probably one of the best card advantage engines in the game currently. The One Ring. So like, if you're in white, mono white, you know, feel free to just add the best card advantage engine in the game. Oh, maybe aside from Ristic Study. But yeah.
I will give honorable mention. This is not a mono white card, but it's a card that goes in mono white strategy, or like the idea with mono white strategies is Temna. Specifically, Temna the Weaver is like, in my eyes, kind of a white card. Obviously, it's white black specifically, but it plays well with the strategies that white itself wants to do. And, you know, outside of you playing a mono white deck anyway, you're probably going to have a second to third to fourth color, and more than likely that color is black, since black is one of the strongest colors. Mm-hmm. So Temna, if you're especially in that stacks lineup, or having a lot of creatures that do a lot of the work for you, Temna's just hardcore card advantage.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yep. So yeah, that's gonna be this episode for card advantage in white. Hopefully, we're able to shed some light on some things when it comes to thinking about card advantage, and you know, if there was some that y'all did not see on this list, pretty much in white. Like I think that we mentioned pretty much the majority of the ones played in like CEDH, but you know, you might have one that that might surprise us. You know what I mean? Like,
let us know.
We're always looking to be surprised by cards, because you know, we might actually start running them in our decks. You know, you never know. So, yeah, that's gonna be it for us here at the Brothers War. I just want to thank everybody again for watching the episode. Once again, just want to remind you that we're gonna be in Colombia in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, but with that being said, we hope you'll have a wonderful night. We'll see y'all later.